What's going on, y'all? It's your favorite gentleman, DeMarlo West, host of the original podcast, When Men Talk. Listen, this is a platform where we are breaking stereotypes, dismantling myths, and making the connections of the experiences of men when they communicate openly and honestly. Join me and my guests when men talk. It's just amazing and powerful. You know what I mean? Like, when I think about like power and impact, and I think about the influence that has, right? I can remember growing up as a kid, there were certain things that my mother would say. And she was like the disciplinarian in my family. So my father was the most on the quiet side, but I just remember growing up and my mother could tell me something. And and I'll be like, I'll push the envelope on mama a little bit. But because my dad was so quiet, when he said something, it was almost like it immediately.
It's now.
Yeah.
It's now.
It's like right now. It got my attention like immediately. So it wasn't until later in life that I was just like, wow, how is it that my dad have such a powerful and impactful voice in my family that evoke a response immediately, as opposed to like a right now response, as opposed to like my mom. So I thought about it, being that the show is When Men Talk. Just a question I want to throw out to you guys is this: what do you feel like? What is the power and impact of a man's voice, like in his family? You know, and there's other aspects too that, you know, we'll chat about, but like when you think of that, what is the first thing that come to your mind?
I mean, leadership for one. Leadership, you know, when a man's voice is so strong and it resonates, you know, like my father's voice was, you know, when he said certain things, you know, he commanded attention. And with that, you know, he can't command respect. Now, I went a little bit different, you know, when I raised my sons. I wasn't as aggressive, as loud voice as my father was, because I feared my father and I didn't want my sons to fear me, you know. But in a way, there's no perfect way of how it's done or how it can be done. It's just whatever way that works for your children or your kids, because each child is raised different and they understand their life trauma is a lot different than ours, because you don't want to realize, well, I didn't want to admit the trauma that we grew up in, you know, in our household. Our household was, you know, could be very chaotic, but it was the household that everybody on the block wanted to be there. Everybody wanted to be a part of our family because they saw this lifestyle, they saw this strong man, they saw this loving woman that everybody wanted to be a part of it. So
they wanted
with
that
us,
dad,
they wanted to
mom.
be there.
Yeah.
But not realizing that it was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Wow.
You know, and that's how me and my brother and my sister had to grow up. You love my father to death, but let me tell you, when he went to the other side.
So that's almost like twofold.
It was, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it was impactful.
It definitely it shows up in different ways, because like for me, my dad was a minister. But prior to him being a minister, he was a drill sergeant in the Marines.
Oh, see.
So you can see that there was a different situation. So there were times when it comes to discipline that he had a very authoritative type of presence because of how he, you know, was used to dealing with his, you know, his drilling and all of that.
Military.
Yeah, so that's where that strict, business kind of energy came from. So, you know, when he spoke, when he gave, you know, a request or whatever it was.
Makes sense.
Or if my mom threatened, I'm gonna tell you, daddy, you know, then you already knew where that was going.
Absolutely.
Even in that.
Absolutely. But then as a minister, of course, now he has a bigger family, if you will, and a different type of responsibility. So he has to, kind of alter, if you will, how it is, because he's being commanded by God for whatever words he's given to his congregation, his sheep, but then have to be compassionate at the same time, but still having a presence that forces whoever's listening to say, okay, he's not going to steer me wrong. He's telling us what we need to know.
He's a good leader.
Blah, 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 that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But we still got that even at home, but it was a whole different thing because now he had a home that he had to gird with the church, and then another home where he had the stuff that he's preaching about, he has to execute that in his own family, picking his own way of how he wants to raise his family, deal with his wife, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's the power of the voice of a man has a lot of influence. At the same time, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. If you want the power that can come naturally, because we're taught that the man is the head of the household. He called, that's what, we're taught, whether they told you that or you heard it, or you know what I mean, or that you experienced it, you know what I mean? So, and in that space of growing up with a father in the house.
Mm-hmm. And see, with me, my children, I believe they feared me because their mother could speak and they'll wait. It's hesitation. But if I say something, it's now, they moving. My father, he never said anything. He was cool. You do what you do, you're a boy. The boy's gonna do stuff. So he didn't do the discipline. It was my mother that disciplined us. And I looked at it like, I got maybe one whooping from my dad. And from there on, it was, listen, don't hurt yourself. So I'm like, I gotta be different than that from when I raised my children. I don't want y'all to go out there and experience things I had to and just figure it out. I'm gonna let you know and I'm gonna correct you right now. So definitely that voice inside the home is needed. Like it's needed and it's wanted.
See, similar to you, it's almost like your dad approached it a little differently. See, my father, he wouldn't necessarily say, well, he wouldn't handle it. He didn't handle it that way because he was such a, I guess, mild-mannered person. He was just not a man of a whole lot of words. But he set the tone, and his impact and power in our household was this. Because mama did this and checked it every step of the way, when it reached the point that daddy said, hey.
And that's all it took though.
Reinforcer.
Yeah, when he came as that reinforcer, and because he didn't show up so aggressively all the time, it made the impact of his minimal words so powerful.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah, that it changed the trajectory on how I behaved. I knew that there are certain things I can't push the envelope too much because one, there's a support system that's going. Mama gonna start it, but then he come back up. So I didn't have many. I can count on one hand. Similar to you, I can count on one hand how many times my daddy whooped me.
One time.
He didn't have to. Daddy said, "Hey, boy," and it was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Let me straighten up." So it's almost like, wow. It's so powerful how his voice, like in that family structure, would just show up so impactful. But then how do we take that from our upbringing and how powerful are our voices in our family structure or in your professional life? Because, we're all entrepreneurs here. And it shows up differently because each lane is different. So in your world, how does yours show up that you have seen so differently than like a woman? Because I can tell you for a fact, because he and I share the same industry. Many gifts and talents as you all are, but it's like Al is a hairstylist and I'm a makeup artist. The impact of our voices as males it changes the whole mindset of the client, as opposed to nothing against the woman,
Gotcha.
but it
Right.
changes it.
Absolutely.
It
You have more
changes
people
it.
wanting to be there just because they want to hear you talk. You know, when you go to get your hair cut, you go into a beauty salon or whatever, there's conversation.
Yeah,
And women want to hear what you have to say.
yeah.
You gonna give me something different than my girlfriend gave me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
Yep.
because my girlfriend is my girlfriend, so she
Right.
kind of where I'm at.
Right.
And your voice is gonna be different because it's a different whole perspective, a different lane. So that's what you get. That's why they come in. They want to hear what you have to say, even while you're in their hair or you what they call beating their face up or whatever.
Sweeping around.
Right. So they definitely gonna come in to hear that.
It's definitely different because, especially in our industry, it's almost like, still the reference of the power of the male's voice, because in the beauty industry, for whatever reason, that more women are more convinced by whatever we say about how something looks because of whatever their experiences are and that kind of thing. So like a lot of women prefer male stylists. A lot of women prefer male makeup artists or whatever. Now, I've heard in my journey, I've heard different, reasons why they prefer that, with their experiences. But I think when we're making the reference about the power of our voices, that sometimes I don't think that we really realize the power of our voice.
Yeah.
Because when you think of the flip side of everything not being so perfect or not being so what we figure the family life or that structure looks like, you know what I mean? Because what I will say with my interaction with my father, like, yeah, we knew when he wasn't playing, you know what I mean? And like most, mom will be the one to get it started, but it's like, if dad has to get into it or if he has to translate to dad, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's
serious. It's now.
It's going to be
happening.
a serious thing. Because if mama couldn't handle it and nip it in the bud and we got to go take it, to dad, then it's like, it's something else. But on the flip side of that, I think when we have that power, or men that, we resonate in that power, I think from the history of what that means for men, especially Black men, I think that sometimes there are components of it that is forgotten because of what society and what our culture has dictated or taught us what being a man is, which is, being in charge, showing power and that kind of thing. Where, just speaking from my space, where growing up as a Black male, I'm thinking, but I don't really ever see dad being as compassionate as mom. Does that mean I'm not supposed to be like that? What does that mean? Yeah. So I think with the power of it, it's not only being able to command attention or to control or to influence, but there still is that aspect of, with that complete power, there is that a responsibility of showing that you can show power with compassion, show power, being able to show love. Because I would have to say I was real grown by the time my father and I ever said we loved each other on the phone. We didn't really hug. We dapped, we shook hands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know that my dad met his father when he was 30. He was separated from his father. From when he was a kid, he remembers some things, but being separated from his father. So when I look at how he interacts with my siblings, and he is a little bit more compassionate and stuff like that, still commanding the attention, still commanding, and we listen to what he says, and I see the relationship with it that didn't really mirror my experience with it, with the compassion part. So, but I think with that, we do have to realize that with that power and us giving the energy that, yes, we're the boss, what we say goes. So if I tell you, hey, do what your mama said, da-da-da-da-da, at the same time, there's that flip side that the energy of being able to show love doesn't mean you're powerless, right, or that you're less than a man or any of that. Because I think as Black men, that's something I think we miss with understanding the power that we have.
But see, that's almost similar to what you were talking about too, I think you mentioned how your dad showed up differently for the audience of the community, right?
Well, I mean, both ways. So he showed up to the community both ways. He showed up with love, respect, power, and craziness.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Got it.
And it doesn't. But in his
it.
world and in our world at the time, that's all we understood. And we thought that that was the norm. But as we grew up, we started realizing that, this ain't right. Certain things.
And you didn't want your children to have that.
But the plus was, my father showed us mad love. I mean, hug, kiss, telling us he loved us, and so it was so confusing, as a kid coming up, where you can be extremely to the left and extremely to the right, where it's love and hate. So we got the best of all worlds. And what it did was it prepared me and my brother and my sister to be able to handle everybody in the streets or in whatever profession that we all chose to do. So we felt that if we could deal with the adversity that we were dealing with at home,
we was gonna make it to anything.
Oh, it was
Anything come to you, you're gonna be all right.
I mean, from high school, to college, to entrepreneurship, to going to different corporate business and this, that, and the third, we could handle it. Because what we would do is we would bring that information back home and we would download it to our father, and then he would give us
advice,
positive information, but being strategic in how we were able to interact with people. And that was a plus for us coming up. And we all are pretty successful in our own little way. But again, I didn't decide to go that way with my kids, because when I mean extreme, it was to the extreme. And you have to have a tough skin, and you have to have a team, which was me and my brother and my sister. We considered ourselves a team. So we were able to lean on each other. Whereas, our kids, all of them didn't come up the way we did.
I can't wait. So it's almost like an early notion of trying to balance it all. Or interpreting what that balance should look like in your adulthood, or what you
template.
Yeah,
you use it.
You got the template.
And he knew he didn't want to use the same template his dad used.
Right.
As with me, I show love. We tell each other we love them when we're off the phone, when we're in face to face. And I didn't get that from my old man. My old man, I believe in his older age now, he's starting to say, I love you more before we hang up off the phone. Give you a hug when he see you. Normally, like you said, we dap. We hit fists, shake hands. And when you shake my hand, look me in my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what he gave. So I can understand what you're saying. So it could be extreme, and then you have to take away from that extreme and say, I'm not giving my children that. Y'all gonna understand how to love, how to care for people, but also hold your authority, show that you're a leader. So I agree. Like I've seen that in families. Mine was different, but there's definitely.
And it's that impact, because that's what it is. It's that impact, because basically we all have basically shared that your father's tone in his voice, the authority that he stands in the way that he projected it on you, it came with a certain response as far as a bodily reaction, a physical reaction. But the impact of it caused you to learn in a way that, okay, either I'm gonna do it just like him, or I'm gonna just take pieces of that because I know how that made me feel. And part of that, some of that made me feel a little awkward. Some of it made me feel uncomfortable. Some of it made me feel detached, disconnected. And then some of it made me feel connected, just the opposite, vice versa of everything else. So it's almost like the impact of it creates another template for us to, whether we have children of our own or nieces and nephews or whatever the case may be. Like for me, the way that my father was, as great as of a man that he was, I wish that he was more vocal, and not only when he got upset or, you know what I mean? I just wish that he was a little bit more vocal as my mother. But the older I got and more mature, I understood, okay, it's the best of both worlds. That's just who he is. That's his personality. But what I grabbed from his template was, okay, when you reach a certain point where you mean business, or you very adamant or very passionate about something, this is how you show up. Mm-hmm. You need to be very assertive in your voice. You need to be very direct, looking people in the eye. Say what you got to say. You don't show, in that time, in their words, you don't show any sign of fear or intimidation or anything
Correct.
like that.
Correct.
Never let them see you sweat.
Never let them see you sweat.
Right.
But the thing about it is, but I was like, okay. Now for me, I took that and it didn't quite work for the best because it showed up. It didn't take much to not see me sweat.
Well, because that's the reality of it. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and I think sometimes, I don't want to say brainwashed, but I think Black men have been influenced by so many things that we're kind of encouraged or influenced to utilize our powers in ways that may not have been the most effective in all situations.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
there's a way we dealing with our families. There's a way we deal with our friends. There's a way we deal with where we work. You know what I mean? And sometimes we don't get the template that says when to use what part of the power that we have. So you end up sometimes you gotta wheel it back in and be like, it's for them to tell you, look, you're not my daddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let me tone that down a little bit.
Right. Because you do get that, because it shows up.
Yeah,
It'll show up. And listen, even in relationships, it'll show up. Now listen, you ain't gonna talk to me now. Don't talk to me like that. And he was like, I ain't say nothing. All I said was, it can be the tone. You know what I mean?
It is the tone.
To you, I'm
You
just
know.
speaking. This is my normal speak.
Yeah.
I didn't raise my voice, but they like, it's different. It came out very different. So you definitely get that inside a relationship. You have to watch your tone.
Oh, yeah.
You have to watch your deliverance. You know, because you can deliver it at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm in control of this. And
That's gonna come with experience, or
experience.
of it happening, or who you dealing with.
I think you gotta screw that up a little bit. You gotta
mess up at least one time.
mess up a little
And you be
bit.
like, okay, well, I ain't doing that no more.
You mess up more than once in different situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you definitely gonna mess up more than once. You know? This situation.
What Al said a little bit earlier made a lot of sense too. See, we as Black men, we've been taught and trained, and not just Black men, we as people. Because when the media gets involved in anything, they basically dictate everything. How we're supposed to act, what we're supposed to do, where, think, whatever.
It started before that though. It started at home. You seeing cousins, uncles, brothers, or if you're younger, them doing things certain ways, so you feel that's the way it's supposed to be done. I've seen him talk to his friend like this, or this girl like this, or even somebody, an adult, certain way. So you jump
Movies
right in
as
there
well,
too. As I'm moving up, I'm like, okay, I seen my big brother say it, so same thing to you.
Yeah.
It don't always work out that way.
Yeah. And that can go one or two ways, because even if you think of it, another version or another way, if you will, of how impactful the man's voice is if a man tells his son, I've seen it with a friend of mine, how he still lives with this to today. His father told him when he was younger, he just being a kid. Okay, boy, get out my face and go on, quit playing. Ain't nobody got time for you. Well, because his dad said that so much to him, he grew up thinking that that's why he cannot survive in a relationship. Because he felt like every time I get in a relationship, the person is gonna leave because nobody has time for me. Why? And I asked him this question. I said, let me ask you something. Why do you feel like that? He said, to be honest with you, Marlo, I'm gonna be very honest with you. It's because when I was a kid, my dad used to always tell me, go on, quit playing. Ain't nobody got time for you. Go on. And so I feel like I'm easy to be dismissed because it was very easy for my father to do it to me. So if my father does it to me, then nobody else stand a chance. So I built up this wall. I said, yeah, but what do you feel from that? Like, what your takeaway from that leaves you with what? And he was like, honestly, it just makes me feel like that I'm less than, but it's because of my dad set that tone. He gave me that template. And so I brought that into my adulthood, and it's just amazing how the man's sound will resonate and it'll carry all the way in to your behavior and to your traits and all of that. And we have to be very careful about how we project this onto other people, children, family. And all
That's
that.
why I said it was the responsibility of that power that we get. Because just like how Tony, you were saying about how your dad was and you chose to do it a different way. So at the same time, not to discount your friend's story, we have that twofold to the responsibility of how we're going to work our power, how we're going to accept our power, how we're going to use our power. Because for me, it was like, okay, the things that I saw that I wasn't comfortable with and my dad was doing, it was like, okay, I'm not doing that.
Absolutely.
But that was my choice. I
out.
took my power to say on my journey, not that that was what my dad felt that he needed to do, considering. I'm thinking, okay, what his examples were, how they behaved, or if he had any other examples until he was 30 again. But by that time, I'm 8. You know what I mean? So I'm already like gotten used to however you're gonna be. But it's like, okay, now I got to take, as a black man, to take my choice to say, okay, my power is going to be that I'm not going to run it like that. Or I won't be like that. I want to be a little more compassionate, because I saw that he was capable because how he dealt with everybody else. So we then have that responsibility, even though we have the responsibility in our space, whoever we're dealing with got to make their choice. And how they're going to deal with their power based off what they experience with us. So that's what we have a responsibility, like 2 ways.
And then as dads, what I found versus my dad to the way I am, it's about the information that we receive growing up
or don't receive.
And have access to.
Or don't receive.
So if you only know certain things in that certain community, if you're only managing of getting that information, just like you said, my brother did this, so I'm gonna do it. But if your brother had seen something from someone else in a more positive way, then he could download it to you, and you can download it to the next person. So that's how it keeps going. See, we can't pick our families at all. But when we get up,
sometimes we wish we could.
We have to be able to direct our families, and that's what I was saying with my dad. Like I wanted to be the opposite. He wasn't vocal. He ain't saying much. Listen to your mother. That's it. Listen to what your mama's saying. That's it. Me, I'm totally different. I want to be more vocal. I'm gonna tell you, hey, that ain't correct, but I'm also gonna say, hey, come over here and tell me what's going on. Why are you doing this? Or whatever the situation is. I want you to know I'm an ear to hear, but I'm also gonna correct you when you're wrong. So I look at it like, my dad wasn't doing it, but I'm gonna do it. I switched the template. His template was, I'm gonna sit back and let your mama handle it. If you get out of hand, we're gonna have a conversation because he didn't whoop us. I'm gonna have a conversation with you. Hey, listen, man, you a boy, man. You ain't supposed to be doing that. You gotta do something different. Uncles, totally different. They were more aggressive, so that's what you see. And it's like, I took a piece of that, a piece of this, and a little bit of that, and I applied that to how I would raise mine, as far as my sons and daughters. So
because that same power translates into your workplace too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when you think about like, if you're the boss, you have that responsibility of how you're going to deal with it. But then when you're not the boss, that doesn't mean you're powerless, but you have to be a little smart because, as black people, we can be a little intimidating.
Right.
Our tone,
We're
our
very
presence.
intimidating.
You know what I mean?
The mere presence.
Just your presence. Your mere presence.
Yeah. To add on what you're saying now, if you can command the right attention, then you can dictate wherever you're trying to go with this situation. I just remember this one thing that I tell my sons this all the time. Perception is greater than reality.
And this is true.
That is so true. That's good.
Because you get the perception first before the reality.
Before the reality. Right.
Exactly.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That is powerful.
It's real simple. What we see is what we believe, but it's not necessarily the truth.
Fact.
It's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
So that's why our kids and grown-up people, we get influenced so heavily and so easily by the perception. We see the jewelry, we see the lavish cars, we see the mink coats, we see everything that's glossy and flossy, not realizing what the debt that is attached to that, or the responsibilities, or all the different things that has to come with that.
The reality of
The
that.
reality.
Yeah.
Can
What it took to get
they
it.
really support what they're really doing?
Yeah.
Is it really real what they're doing?
Yeah.
And most times it's not. It's all a perception.
So tell me this, what would be like your takeaway from it though? Like if you could just share to the world, if you could just tell the world, like what would be that one thing you would want the world to know, children, adults, about the way that you would love to see the way that the impact and power of a man's voice is handled? What would be your advice to give somebody with that? whether it's a father or, like for me, it will be handle it similar to what we already talked about. Handle it with compassion and care, because I believe I'm an advocate for education. So I would want to have an educational experience with people that I encounter, because that's a part of my version of the impact. You see what I'm saying? Like, I want you to know, I want you to learn and know why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I said what I said, and why I want you to change this part of whatever the subject matter is.
Make your own template. That's what I would say. Make your own template, because you see something, heard about it, or was just thinking it's the right way to do it. Make your own template. Learn something from your experiences and make your own template. That's what I would want to give.
Yeah.
Make your own template. Like, there's no design way of being a man. There's no design way. Yeah, there's no
Recently, my son had mentioned to me about the 24-hour window. Every person has a 24-hour window. So what actions are you doing within that 24-hour window to make your life better? We believe in my family to don't be average, you know. And if you're in the act of doing something, you know, you don't have to be rich, but you have to be doing something. You don't want to be average. Why? Doing nothing is average. And we fall so easily in that. But everybody's teaching methods are different. Again, like how my father taught me, it worked, but it didn't work because I didn't want to use certain things. But it did work because we came out the way we came out. But that doesn't mean that it's going to work for the new generation.
Yeah.
So we have to always be evolving.
Yeah.
So everybody got 24 hours.
I tell my nephew this too. I tell him, I said, listen, to that point, I said, look, whatever you do, I don't care what it is in your pursuit of success, whatever you do, your responsibility is to be great. You got to be great and you got to be successful at it. You need to be the best at it in the room. That needs to be your mindset every time you show up. Because if that, I don't care if 2 people in the room, before you get there, you need to have enough education. You need to have enough knowledge. You need to have enough experience. Even if the experience is on the short end of the stick, you need to have some running knowledge to be able to survive an intellectual conversation so that you can pull up to the table and offer your perspective and or ideas to anything.
Absolutely.
Anything,
Well
be
said,
great
well
at
said.
it. And study, like, see, there go that word coming out now, see. Study to show thyself. You know what I'm talking about? I knew I had some help in.
If I was to just sum it up for me, and if I'm going to give, my advice in reference to the power thing to other Black men, in a nutshell, I would say that it would be important for you to understand what your power is.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then at that point, when you understand what your power is and how your power influences, then take accountability for the choices you're going to make.
That's powerful.
So, because the power can mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what way we choose to utilize our powers, like you have choices.
That's right.
Yeah, you do.
So, and I tell people all the time, you got all the choices in the world. You got that power to make the choices, but just also realize the responsibility that comes with the choice that you're making.
Absolutely.
However you see fit.
Yeah.
So, as long as you can do that, hey. Yeah.
You got my
Show
attention.
and approve.
See, there it is again. There it is again. Study to show thyself. Man,
This is good.
that is incredible. Wasn't that good? That was good.
Yeah,
I
good.
appreciate.
We appreciate
it's so powerful. I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all some powerful man. Listen, you got to get on the road. I appreciate it. Man, listen.
Hey, to the show.
That's right. Hey,
When men talk.
That's it.
Cheers.